The film begins with Valerie, a renowned motivational speaker known across the world. Everyone finds hope in her words, but no one knows the pain she silently endures. Every night, she is haunted by nightmares where it feels like someone is pulling her into the water. The reason behind these dreams remains unknown to her. Soon, the story reveals that Valerie's mother passed away years ago. Her father's whereabouts are uncertain. Her husband, Robbie, loves her deeply. One day, Valerie receives a letter from her village, which dampens her mood. Feeling low, she decides to meet a friend, Crystal, but it doesn't help much. Valerie has been noticing strange changes in herself, an intense itch on her scalp that doesn't go away. She is shown taking both anti-itch medicine and birth control pills. Despite medication, the itching persists, and she turns to the internet for answers. The search results frighten her, prompting her to shut her laptop. An even stranger incident happens. Her house becomes overrun with ants. Following them, she discovers a whole ant colony inside her home. She peers inside and is terrified by the sight. The next day, Valerie prepares for an international tour and needs her birth certificate. She can't find it among her documents and assumes her mother had it. She visits her Aunt Twee to ask about a box her mother left for her. They reminisce about her mother, whom Valerie misses dearly. Twee gives her the address of a locker where the box might be. Valerie and Twee visit the warehouse where the locker is supposed to be but find the box missing. Twee suspects that Valerie's father might have taken it. Valerie returns home, still troubled by the persistent scalp itching, scratching her head uncontrollably. Her husband starts to notice her odd behavior. Even doctors are unable to diagnose the cause, and Valerie begins to suspect it might be a genetic issue, possibly inherited from her mother. She shifts focus to her tour and decides to visit her father Sang before leaving. To hide the scalp irritation, she wears a cap. At the village, she meets Sang, a former soldier who now lives as a monk. Valerie asks about the box, but he claims to know nothing. Inside his room hangs a bizarre painting. When she inquires, he tells her about Sanchi, a parasitic entity that feeds on human spiritual energy and stays with its host until it completely consumes them. Though not there for supernatural tales, Valerie secretly steals his keys and accesses his locker. The box isn't there, but she finds her birth certificate. As she prepares to leave, she hears a baby crying in the warehouse and senses that child is drowning. Following the sound leads her to a storeroom that seems to be filled with ants. When she tries to observe them, she feels multiple hands gripping her shoulders. Turning around in fear, she sees only the guard, revealing it was a hallucination. Confused, Valerie returns home. What happened today is unlike anything she's ever experienced. She looks through the items from Sang's locker, old family photographs of her father as a soldier and her beautiful mother. As she examines them, Valerie realizes she never actually knew how her mother died. Among the photos, she sees one of her mother's photo that sparks further mystery. Valerie notices a mark on her hand, similar to the allergy rash she had seen during her online research. This confirms that her current illness once affected her mother too, and is somehow connected to her. This disease makes Valerie extremely irritable, even causing her to behave harshly with Robbie. Her frustration continues to grow. One night, she decides she won't scratch her scalp, so she wears gloves and ties her hands before going to bed. But the next morning, she wakes up with a jolt. The gloves are gone, and she has scratched her scalp so severely that it's bleeding, terrifying her. Valerie takes a picture of her mother showing similar allergy marks to Twee. Twee grows somber and reveals that her mother may have been burdened by a curse or some sort of shadow, which eventually led to her death. Despite all efforts, she couldn't save her. When Valerie asks what her father did during that time, Twee simply advises her to stay away from him. Later, Valerie heads to a photo shoot. Under the heavy lights, she sees a second figure standing beside her own shadow, which deeply unsettles her. She says nothing and returns home, only to scratch her scalp again until it bleeds. Robbie notices the bleeding. Valerie lies, pretending it's nothing serious. When she opens the medicine drawer, Robbie finds her birth control pills. This discovery sparks an argument between them. Valerie, overwhelmed by her inner struggles, tells Robbie to stay away from her. Their relationship starts to fall apart. Now living alone in her room, Valerie resolves not to scratch her scalp again at night. She binds her hands before sleeping. However, in the morning she finds her hands free and her scalp once again bleeding. She realizes that an external entity must be involved, because she couldn't have untied herself. Once again, she notices a swarm of ants in the house and follows them. She wants to understand what these ants are doing, so she starts breaking through the wall. Just then, there's a knock on the door. Sang arrives. He's deeply worried about Valerie and explains that since she hasn't been answering his calls, he came over. He starts talking about Valerie's mother. He says she was a wonderful woman and finally reveals the truth about her death. Years ago, while serving as a soldier, he killed an enemy, a girl with some unknown dark power. After her death, that power transferred into him. Eventually, it affected Valerie's mother. He later learns this entity is called a Sanchi, a parasitic being that attaches to a host and feeds on their spiritual energy. Despite all efforts, he fails to remove the parasite from her mother. After Valerie is born, the Sanchi passes into her. Now, strange and mysterious events begin to surround Valerie's life. Sang already knows that she will react strongly after learning the truth. So he mixes sleeping pills in her tea. As a result, she falls asleep immediately. Upon waking up, she remembers everything and begins to search for information about her mother's death. Inside the house, she discovers several newspaper clippings and notes, all confirming that it was actually her father who murdered her mother. This revelation shatters her emotionally. Suddenly, rain starts falling. Valerie goes upstairs to close the windows and sees her mother's shadow outside the window. She begins to relive the events of the day her mother died. In a flashback, she witnesses her mother struggling while Sang forcefully drowns her in water. This horrifying memory makes everything clear to her. Valerie then rushes to confront her father and storms into his home, destroying his belongings in anger. She demands to know why he killed her mother. Sang denies murdering her and claims he was trying to save her from the creature named Sanchi. He says Sanchi was extremely powerful and he kept losing against it. Her mother eventually died fighting that same entity. Sang further explains that Valerie's mother actually wanted to save her from Sanchi, and in that struggle she took her own life. Even in death, she failed to fulfill her mission, and now the creature remains with Valerie. The only way to save her is to eliminate Sanchi once and for all. These revelations terrify Valerie and she leaves his house, returning home. The next day, she has a major seminar, one of the most important events of her life. She doesn't want to embarrass herself in front of the crowd by scratching her head uncontrollably, so she wears a cap to hide her condition. The seminar begins with a large audience and high ratings. She invites a girl, Rachel, on stage and begins her speech. She places Rachel in front of a mirror and tells the audience that without understanding one's true inner self, no one can succeed. While speaking, she instinctively starts scratching her scalp under the cap. In the mirror, she sees not only the Rachel's reflection, but also another shadow standing behind her, which terrifies her. She recognizes it as the entity Sanchi. Overwhelmed with fear and the truth she just discovered, she collapses. Her condition shocks everyone present. She continues to scratch her head furiously until she decides to flee from the stage and runs to her car. Back at home, she continues to scratch her head so violently that it creates a hole in her scalp. She inserts her finger into it, touching her brain, which causes brain damage. She loses consciousness and collapses on the floor. Robbie, who is present at her house, sees her critical condition and immediately takes her to the hospital. Thanks to timely medical help, Valerie's life is saved. However, the threat of Sanchi still looms large over her. Inside the hospital's dark environment, the entity is clearly seen tormenting her. It hovers above her, aggravating her scalp. Yet this time, Valerie doesn't scream or panic. She remains calm. The creature tries to provoke her by hitting her head, but she resists scratching. Valerie now understands the truth. She is no longer afraid. She wants to fight back. As she begins confronting her fears, her condition starts to improve. The grip of the creature over her weakens gradually. Portion of the credit also goes to Robbie, who is taking great care of her. He constantly reminds her not to touch her scalp, as her condition has already caused partial paralysis in her body. Valerie struggles to walk due to the damage in her legs and begins learning how to walk in a new way. At night, Robbie ties her hands so she doesn't scratch her head in sleep. However, by morning, her hands are untied and she has scratched her head again. A pair of scissors lies near her, making Robbie believe that Valerie cut the ropes herself. He gets angry, thinking Valerie doesn't want to heal and that his efforts are in vain. Valerie tries to explain that it's the entity, Sanchi, doing this, not her, but Robbie refuses to listen. Robbie leaves in anger, and Valerie is left completely alone. She feels defeated and needs support. To regain strength, she watches her own motivational videos. These give her hope, and she decides to face Sanchi on her own and end this nightmare. At night, she puts Robbie to sleep using sleeping pills and enters a room filled with mirrors. She begins shouting, asking the entity to come out and show itself. First, nothing happens. Then, a terrifying hand emerges from a mirror and grabs her. The entity, Sanchi, finally appears and tells Valerie in a horrific voice that it won't leave her. Puts a knife to her neck, and Valerie screams in fear. Robbie regains consciousness and finds himself tied to the bed. He struggles to free himself and calls out to Valerie. Meanwhile, Valerie prepares to cut off her own hand so she can never scratch her head again. She marks her hand and places it under a machine cutter. But inflicting such pain is not easy. After several failed attempts, she gathers courage and finally lowers the cutter onto her hand. Blood splashes onto her face, and she suffers immense pain but tries to control the bleeding. After stopping the blood, she cleans her face and decides to cut off her other hand too. Just then, Sanchi appears behind her and grabs her. This time, Valerie doesn't panic. Sanchi tries to scare her, threatening to devour her and drink her blood. Valerie keeps him engaged in conversation and suddenly places his hand under the same cutter, slamming it down. Robbie, hearing the terrifying noises, becomes worried. Valerie, now determined, picks up the machine and starts attacking Sanchi with it. However, every time she cuts a part of him, it regenerates. Seeing this, Valerie becomes genuinely scared and tries to escape. As she attempts to flee, Sanchi pounces on her and declares that no one will survive. Valerie responds that neither will he. She drags herself into a pool of water and jumps in. Sanchi, being weak against water, follows her but starts convulsing in pain. Valerie holds on to him tightly, trying to drown him. In that moment, she realizes why her mother jumped into water that day. It was to kill Sanchi. Her father was never responsible for the death. Her mother died fighting Sanchi. Robbie manages to free himself and jumps into the water to rescue Valerie. As he pulls her out, he notices a small dark creature in her hand. A miniature version of Sanchi. Means the entity has become weaker. Valerie holds it underwater where it dissolves and disappears. In the post-credits scene, Valerie is shown with a baby. Her severed hand is now healed and reattached. She is happy, living peacefully with her child. However, while feeding the baby, a small bug appears on the baby's face, leaving a chilling question. Has Sanchi really ended? And with that, the movie concludes. I hope you liked my video. If you did, please like and share it. And if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. We keep bringing such content regularly. Peace.